Well, I started French horn in the fourth grade and never really got professional training till I was in college. And as a full-time electrical engineering student at Washington University in St. Louis, I could take as many credits as I wanted, and I took applied music, which was my lesson with Cade Friedel of the St. Louis Symphony. So that was my professional training. And I played in the university orchestra and band, but started with community organizations at the same time. The area there was very rich in string players, and they had a lot of orchestras and needed wind players. So I started going to a lot of community orchestras and being one of the horns there. So that was really the start of that. Then was in the first round of the draft lottery. This was back in the 60s, and went in the Army in 1971, signed up in order to get a guaranteed job, but didn't elect to play in a music group because that would have been a 4-year commitment, and my chosen field in electronics was a 3-year commitment. So that was the only time I didn't play, actually, was when I was in the Army for 3 years, working in a television station at West Point, not as a cadet, but as an enlisted man. But as soon as I got out of that, I got my first job out in California and joined a community orchestra, actually, at first, Pasadena City College and Community Orchestra. And then kids came along and I moved to the suburbs to a town called Covina, California. And they didn't have an orchestra, but they had a band. And so that was about 1978 then, joined the Covina Concert Band and played in that until I left California in 1990 and moved back to the Midwest. My origins, I was born in Waukegan across the lake here, and got a job at Medallion Instrumentation in Spring Lake and found a house in Fruitport and set about trying to find a community band. This is before the World Wide Web knew everything. This is 1990, and so I actually went into Christian music, which later became Meyer Music. I think it might have been Meyer Christian Music at the time, and asked the proprietor of the store if he knew anything about a community band, and he only knew one contact, and that was Don Warner, who actually had a big band at the time. And I called him and he said, "Oh, French horn, you don't want that, but you want the Muskegon Symphonic Band." And so I went to a rehearsal there and joined a horn section that had many of the players we still have. I think Judy and, of course, Betsy, who's just recently passed away, but Betty and a guy named Doug Parrott and stuff were the horn section, and started playing with that. And we had Don Miller as our conductor, and that kind of gradually built. We used to do a concert called the Tribute to Sousa that was kind of his dream. He would dress up as John Philip Sousa and take the stage, and we'd do a concert that he believed to be in the Sousa tradition of doing feature numbers, whether they be transcriptions or original band works, and always having a Sousa march as an encore, not listed in the program. And it was popular enough that we had huge crowds in the Frauenthal. People really looked forward to it. And of course, in those days, the newspaper actually covered even things like that. So I think that helped build the notoriety of it. But Don's dream was always to do an international trip to the Bournemouth Festival in Bournemouth, England. And this was all set for 1996. And we were all rehearsed and ready to go. And at the time, our current director, Gail, was married to Don, and he suddenly had a heart attack like a week before the trip and died. And we were all devastated, of course, but still everybody had their tickets and we had our music. And lo and behold, we found somebody who could step in as director, Lynn Middlebrook. He had a passport that had like an extra week on it. It was almost expired, but he could still go and direct us, and we went. It was a real emotional trip, I guess. The joy of being there and knowing that this was Don's dream, and to perform there, and yet knowing that he wasn't there. It was really bittersweet, but I think really brought the band closer together. Probably was really the beginning of the real family atmosphere that I think we still have to this day. And can't remember what chair I was playing. I kind of gradually worked my way up, and I was section leader for a few years. And at some point, I said, I don't really want this pressure, and kind of took a back seat, let the young bucks take over. Although our section leader right now, Susan Peoples, is actually, she's a 1949er like me, and I hold it over her head that she's actually a couple months older than I am, and I can kid her about, well, if I was as old as you, I might have that trouble or something. So, but as far as evolution of the band, I think we've evolved like a lot of the community bands, not, certainly by some of our own initiative, but also by the music that we're getting for bands now. I mean, in the days when I was starting that in my previous career, it was marches and transcriptions and very little original band works. And now, thanks to the really probably more the good school programs and the fact that there is some money for composers in composing original band music, we're getting, you pick your level of challenges that you want in band music. And so that forces everybody to keep on their toes and keep their skills up, I think. Meanwhile, we've actually got a community orchestra formed here now, the Shoreline Symphony, that meets here at MCC, and I'm kind of excited about getting back into orchestral music for French horn players. Band music is often, we're kind of more in the background, featured not as much as other instruments. Orchestral music, we're often featured more, and I enjoy the challenge of that. So that keeps me busy, along with other recreational things. In a couple of things that really help with networking amongst community musicians is one that's right here locally. Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp has originally one adult session. It started in 1993 with 17 people. I was one of them in that original group, the only horn there. It's grown now to where they have two different summer sessions. One they call the 3-4 camp, which is simpler music, and the other one, 5-6 camp, which is the more complex music. And both of them draw 70 to 100 people. So that's one of the earlier places where people from, at first all over the state, but now all over the country, and we even get Canadians coming to that now. So we get to know people from a lot of different bands, and that's expanded. There's adult band camps everywhere. I do one in Pennsylvania, done one in Williamsburg, Virginia. Interlochen now has an adult camp, so they just keep, out to Breckenridge, Colorado. So it's just expanding all over. The Association of Concert Bands, if you get involved in that, has a national convention. Again, people from all over the country coming together to play band music. And this leads to connections. My wife and I have traveled with a group in Indiana called Windiana to China because they needed more people to round out their band, and thanks to these connections we've made at the various camps and stuff, they called us, and said, we know you have a passport and you can go. We've traveled with Holland American Legion Band. We've traveled with a band in Quincy, Illinois, where we played for the 2005 Association of Concert Bands Convention. Again, making those connections. They needed people. they knew us, and it just really works nicely. The whole adult music movement is alive and well and provides all kinds of great opportunities for playing at all different levels. And if you don't partake, it's because you don't have time or it's your own fault. So.